Hello and welcome to Builders. Today we have the privilege of speaking with Pooyan Seddighzadeh, Vice President of Engineering at NOVO Energy. NOVO Energy started as a joint venture between Volvo Cars and Northvolt and was created to develop and manufacture high-performance, sustainable battery cells for electric vehicles. With a mission to power the next generation of electric mobility, NOVO Energy is driving innovation in energy storage, battery production, and green manufacturing, helping to accelerate the shift towards a fossil-free future. At the forefront of this transformation is Pooyan, a seasoned engineering leader with deep expertise in battery technology. He has played a pivotal role in scaling teams, advancing cutting-edge technologies, and championing sustainability initiatives within the energy sector. Today we'll dive into battery innovation, engineering leadership, sustainability, and the future of energy. Pooyan, a warm welcome to Builders. We've got lots to talk about.
Thank you. Happy to be part of it.
Yeah, really nice to have you here. So thanks for joining. Pooyan, I normally like to start with, I guess, sharing a little bit about themselves, their background. So could you share a bit about your journey into the battery cell industry? What came before? What sparked your interest in this field?
Sure. So if I give a short intro of my journey so far, I'm a mechanical engineer, so that's basically by heart an engineer. I normally say started my professional life within automotive before the automotive was became to today's electrification. I studied in city of Gothenburg in Sweden, and I started at, of course, Swedish-based automotive brands such as Volvo Cars, Scania. That's where I scaled the basics of engineering. And then what made me to coming close to batteries was basically the year is nowadays, it feels like many years ago, but 2016, 17, EVs, electrification, it started to really scale in Europe. And that's basically my technical curiosity got me to come closer and closer to that area. And the past 7-8 years, I have been deep diving battery technology as a member of earlier Northvolt, and as you mentioned, nowadays in my current role as Vice President for Engineering at NOVO Energy.
Fantastic. And how has this kind of previous experience prepared you for your leadership role at NOVO Energy today?
Basically, if I give you I normally simplify my many years experience in a simple saying, telling that I learned technical engineering after my degree in Gothenburg and in traditional Swedish companies. Scaled corporates with way of workings, with supervisors, with people who can train, and they have done it over time. So I normally afterwards I got a very high quality engineering skill set, and then I became a leader. I learned leadership, people, mission, ambitions. How do you basically get that technical aim to come true? Because it's never stronger than the team doing it. That started in my roles at Scania. They make heavy trucks. And then I learned scaling, building, bringing a vision and mission life. That became the battery journey. Basically, when I started at Northvolt, we had all the capabilities in myself and many other driven people, and we had a vision, very clear one. And then I learned to scale it. That's basically how this all ties together. And now I have done the battery teams and battery size many times. So the latest and greatest, so the best one is the NOVO one, which I have been deploying with all the learnings.
Fantastic. And talking about the evolution of battery technology, what are some of the biggest technological shifts, would you say, that you've witnessed in the battery energy sector over the past decade?
Basically, as you all basically know in different levels, battery technology is still pretty new. And now I talk about vehicle applications. It's an evolving technology. It's constantly EVs, it's constantly improving in product performance, market demands. So it's basically still in evolving and scaling phase. It has not yet saturated. And I normally say in such industry to scale, you need to be fast enough and need to be flexible enough. And normally I told resilience, be able to adapt as you go, because the need constantly evolves and scales. That's the complexity in this, because it's not any longer, if you compare it to traditional industries, it's not any longer that this industry gets to a certain high majority before we deploy it. You need to go in parallel in technologies, in manufacturing technologies, in people skill sets, etc., etc. So it demands a certain way of thinking. It's way more close to electronics, or it's basically, I normally tell, the resilience and the flexibility of a software in a hardware called battery cell. That's basically what I feel I have experienced.
And I mean, yeah, you were just touching upon how much it's still fairly recent, the battery kind of uh, industry and everything growing so rapidly. But it's growing rapidly, but also with challenges as well. How do you ensure that these kind of technological advancements at Novo Energy align with the company's overall kind of strategic goals?
If I start to comment the speed or rapidly, this industry from a sustainability point of view, I normally, at least that's why I personally believe in, we have started late in Europe, and we try to be as fast as we can given the conditions we have, conditions such as regulations, rules, competences, you name it. So it is a very demanding and tricky, and on the same way rewarding industry. It's difficult to make it. When you make it, it's very, very rewarding. And it's not at all common. So you don't have a lot of European benchmarks in this industry.
No, exactly. I mean, like China is probably it's the kind of dominant player, right?
Exactly.
So the EU, even the US, are kind of playing catch up. Do you think here, or?
I believe if I basically, this industry started in Japan by Sony Panasonic due to electronics, consumable electronics, to be more specific with laptops, because that was what was driving it. It went further to Korea and China to scale because of the speed and the resilience. So it has been now, as you mentioned, in Asia, China is obviously the biggest player in this market. And nowadays, since started, like if you go back to 2016, 17, Europe with Northvolt and many other companies, which are, some of them are still players in the market, some of them sadly didn't manage. Europe is trying to recover and catch up. And as you mentioned, US within EU regulations, they try to, in the same way, try to get that competitive advantage. Everybody tries to get it there, but of course, in a scale comparing to China, none of the other comparisons are in scale a reasonable comparison, because this is very, very big industry there, and everybody else is still in the mode of deploying, scaling with all its challenges. So when you talk about challenges and speed, of course, it started late and it has a lot of challenges, but that's what's making this industry, in my view, very fun and rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. It would be boring without challenges, right?
Of course.
But on the topic of China, I was reading before as well how as a country that it was using far less than its kind of potential, its kind of maximum battery cell kind of output, which leads to this kind of overcapacity in the market, and then that kind of impacts on pricing. There's its pricing pressures and more, right? How's Novo Energy kind of navigating those challenges of this kind of oversupply?
If you take Novo Energy is one player. If I commented honestly on a bigger level, where Novo is one player, there are many others. So there is, if you look at the past, let's call it 2 years, 2023 up to the day we talk, there is a huge overcapacity in China for production of EV batteries, and the market trend has sadly declined. And then that one can be due to many reasons: regulations, cost, customer behaviors. You can talk about it, but the combination of overcapacity in China, hand in hand with the declining market trend, doesn't make this landscape easier, because obviously the available capacity, mainly in China, that try to get utilized. And that cause, of course, a market landscape for all the other players, that the system becomes a bit more, let's call it allocated, or a bit more, the whole industry gets impacted. And that's not, Novo is again one player, but this is a generic topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And the energy storage market as well. This is increasingly competitive too. I'm interested in kind of how Novo Energy tries to differentiate itself in this space.
If you take Novo Energy's focus, where I am today, is mainly EVs and electrical vehicles. If I comment about ESS or energy storage systems, it's of course batteries, but that landscape in the scheme of in the market is a bit different, because requirements for automotive is completely different compared to energy storage. It's not basically a battery cell you need to move. Majority are fixed, so fast charging and different requirements can be very lighter, and then that impacts, of course, battery technology chemistries, because that's all. And that drives a different cost model. So I normally tell ESS and energy storage is part of the same landscape, enabling the same environmental goal, but the elements in the game are not exactly the same and the requirements are not, because of course these are you can imagine a cell in a car with passengers is a very different application than a cell part of a fixed rack for energy storage.
Yep.
Everybody gets
Yep.
that. So it is a bit different playground, but it's similar cells in the systems.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned briefly a few minutes ago about kind of regulations and policies in different countries. How's this impacting Novo Energy? How's a company trying to stay ahead and remain adaptable in this sense?
If I comment generally Europe and batteries, of course Europe has certain regulations and that is enabling certain speed for all these projects. It's starting when majority of the players in the European market, they try to deploy a battery factory. They need environmental permits. They need to go through a certain process. If you compare it currently on the global landscape, those procedures in Europe for a reason to be honest, but they are way more time demanding. So as far as with the players, they try to compete on a same global market. Of course, they go with very different needs and lead times to get their stuff. So let's start with permitting to build a battery site which has chemical components, safety risk, sound and vibration levels, etc., etc. So that those procedures in Asia compared to Europe in general are very different. And then after that, you have sourcing of material, competences. You can relocate from other countries to your country, benefits. So it's a huge landscape. And I normally tell what makes it even more interesting is that we compete on an international landscape, on a global landscape, but regulations today, they are getting adopted, but sadly not fast enough. So it means that the front runners, the early ones, they need to go through these lead times as well as try to impact as much as they can for the future. So that's what I have experienced the last, let's call it 7-8 years as part of battery. Basically, regulation is following, but always later and always by impact to a better for everything, but not fast enough.
Yep.
And that makes it a bit tricky.
Almost as like a reaction, right?
It's basically a consequence. We try to do this doesn't make sense. Let's figure out. So, and that doesn't make the front runners, such as Northvolt, such as many other companies in this similar field, that doesn't make it easier. It makes it more rewarding, and the impact for a society is still there. But being that front runner, and I believe, to be honest, being part of a Northvolt journey early, it's very difficult to experience it, because doing something for the first time ever in that scale is not easy. And you go with the risk, and that's, I normally say, it's why it also gets, again, rewarding when you make it.
Yeah, indeed. And on the point of, I mean, regulation and policies and everything, a lot of that's around sustainability. We can't really talk in this episode without a huge focus on sustainability and the future of energy. So I mean, this is obvious. Sustainability is obviously at the core of Novo's mission, right? And there's battery recycling becoming a major priority for the EV, the electric vehicle industry.
Of course.
But this is not just from a sustainability perspective, right? It's also, you've got economic and geopolitical reasons as well. We've mentioned geopolitical. We mentioned China being the dominant player, and the Europe and US kind of playing catch up. What initiatives is Novo Energy undertaking to kind of meet these kind of upcoming battery recycling requirements?
Understood. If I take first sustainability, I want to highlight that sustainability is a very wide area, and then normally broad, in the battery world, people are focusing a lot on sourcing of material. They focus on the product and they focus on recycling, which is probably the core of it. I don't disagree. I want to highlight that what is also equally important, that we build these factories. It takes years to get all this construction work done. Having that in mind in all you do is the key, because it doesn't get sustainability from a organizational point of view. Which type of concrete to use for your factories? Have you done your office with wood, locally sourced wooden structures, or steel from other? It is a complex area. And then what I'm pretty proud of is that applying that in everything you do is the key, because then you get a mindset there, and that mindset normally remains for down the road when you try to make cells, source materials, and it becomes a value to a company than right, because that
Right.
is what sticks and that is what remains basically. If I comment recycling, you ask, of course, badly recycling is a very key element of this whole. If it's a circular business case, it will the raw material is not infinite, so this business
No.
model needs it. Otherwise, it will not hold together. If I simplify it,
Yes.
and then you have, of course, geopolitical as well as financial reasons behind this as well.
Yes.
But not only. In case of recycling, basically, at majority of the battery sites, they try to have a phase one for cell manufacturing, and then they can probably focus on enabling recycling as a second. And recycling has also in battery world different technologies, but simplified. You have dismantling, separation. You need to make a black mass. You need to basically grind the cells, and then you have a chemical process called hydrometallurgy. So doing all of that in a same location is the most integrated process we can get. However, in permits, that's not so easy, as well as the investment. So doing it in my experience, doing it stage wise and try to centralize what makes sense to get centralized. That's the strategy to getting recycling, both to financially fly as well as in capacities get installed across Europe.
And do you feel? I don't know exactly what these different regulations or policies might be around, particularly around kind of sustainability. If you have to source X% of, or rather X% of your batteries must be recycled on the material that goes into building them. But do you feel this kind of pressure when it comes
It
to
does.
these regulations?
It does. Simply, yes. It's coming in stage-wise introductions, and that is from everything from source of origin of metals, how it is done. Normally, it's coming in a regulation called battery passport, like traceability, sourcing. Of course it does, because that puts the pressure on the entire industry that you need to basically track it, document it, present it. Otherwise, you will not follow. So, of course, it does. For the key question is that this is if we deploy those requirements only in Europe or on a global landscape. Because currently, as I mentioned earlier, we try to compete in a pretty challenging conditions, and I think this is very important. But the key for planet Earth is to deploy it across the whole thing. Otherwise, I think the competition doesn't get easier.
Yeah, and the competition is, it's unfair, really, then, because you're competing maybe on a global level, but these regulations are kind of imposed on a local level, which is then, could be far more strangling than in other areas, right? Which is, it's often the case, but it's like when you speak about it and you say, okay, well, the effects here, or the externalities, if you want to put it that way, they're global kind of effects, right?
But a second, if you want to know, and then when we talk about EVs and cars, if you are any supplier to a car manufacturer, and it doesn't necessarily need to be batteries, you can deliver components, seats, panels. Of course, the car manufacturers are demanding certain sustainability requirements to all their OEM levels. And this is, of course, a bit more tricky for a battery cell maker, because the metals are not always very available in Europe, but the demand comes from the end customer. And the end customer, in case by case, a requirement never in life comes for free, because the more you demand, normally, the more challenging it gets in cost and competition. That's like the trend of life. That's how it works. So it's a judgment call, but I do believe personally that this is the way. This is what needs to, because if we do this for a sustainability aim in the end game, this is the right way, because we need to basically unify it and drive it, and it doesn't come by itself.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're completely right, and I think if the kind of end game is sustainability or whatever it might be for the company, there's also these kind of positive secondary effects. We've spoken about the economic kind of reasons behind them as well. But in terms of a sustainability initiative, or is there a sustainability initiative or project that you're particularly proud of, or most proud of, that you can talk about?
To be very honest, I didn't deep dive in the beginning. I was one of the early Northvolt employees, 2017, and I normally tell at Northvolt, before I joined NOVO Energy, we built Europe's first homegrown battery cell manufacturing. It was basically engineered, sourced, try and error, and figured out. And the second and the moment we made the first cell is basically a mark in my mental brain which I will never forget. People are asking, Pooyan, what is the special? We experienced a lot of opportunities and a lot of challenges, but few of them are, I remember them second by second, and I remember the impact. And I'm probably a day I will look my grandkid in his eyes until I tried. So
Yeah.
I think if you ask me what is tangible, I still stick to that until making the first European cell in Sweden, up north Sweden, is a huge difference to just show planet Earth that it is possible if you really want.
Yeah. And how long did that kind of process take?
I started as officially as an employee. I don't remember 20x at Northvolt, I believe, 2018, and the first time I held the first cell with a team of tired but proud and emotional team is 28th December 2021. So the journey took some years, but I can tell you, scaling the industry, the product design, the company, financing, all that, this is incredibly fast, to be honest, compared to, and that's what I feel the timeline is software deployment, but on a hardware reality. So that is making it a bit tricky.
And we'll talk a little bit about scaling, like the team that you've been scaling and everything shortly. But still on the topic of sustainability efforts and everything, how do you measure the impact of these efforts, both environmentally but also economically?
Environmental goals and targets. We have some measurable targets in any company. Internal company, for example, if you take Northvolt has a yearly sustainability report where you can clearly see. And I am pretty proud if every company issued they do a financial report, but to do a sustainability, what did you do this year to make planet Earth cleaner? So that's it's not demanded by law, as I know, but I know that it's getting a trend, which is a good thing Northvolt started to do. So I'm extra proud.
Fantastic.
It's about it's about footprints, it's about energy consumption, it's about amount of power, it's about space per employee. You can see there are a lot of different ways to measure it. And to be very honest, if you ask me, there is no right or wrong. You need to map what makes sense for your business. I need to try and measure it, because if you don't do it, you will not see the trend, and you will probably not by nature do the needed stuff. That's my view. In battery studies, certain measures. In other industries, is some other, like energy consumption, heat exposed to environment. There are many ways to measure it. And for me, to be very honest, putting the boundaries in these discussions are also very, very tricky, because the boundary becomes one unit planet Earth in the end. So you need to be able to limit it, to be able to measure it.
Yeah. No, really, nice way of doing it with this sustainability report in the same way as
of course.
You spoke about the financial report.
If you do, you need to do both, because you need to be financially stable, but if you need to also be sustainable, otherwise it will not hold. So that's a dilemma to have in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And the energy industry as a whole often faces tension between these kind of short-term operational demands and this long-term sustainability objectives. We've been talking a bit about some of them. How do you navigate this balance? It's a fine balance, right? This short-term
it is a fine balance.
and
It's always tricky, especially when you are a player. If you are a player on the market, which is a startup company or a new incoming player, then you have, of course, a balance of how do I manage and survive short, mid-term, but still do the right thing for the bigger perspective. That is a very fine line, to be honest, because you need to manage to come to your next day, but your existence is sustainability and overall, we call it green transformation, or what you want to call it. But it means that how do you make those smaller cars to manage, but still in the right path? That is a very tricky one, but it is essential, to be honest. Otherwise, you secure the short term, but you never have that. You never come to your vision and mission, because it's like you don't get there. Not always so easy, and especially not at all nowadays easy, given the financial cost levels of different elements in this industry. At least when I talk about Europe.
Yeah. And let's get on to a little bit scaling the engineering teams, and particularly how hard that is in this kind of rapidly evolving industry, right? What would you say what are the biggest challenges when it comes to hiring for and scaling engineering teams?
in general, maybe I should tell my context. I scaled a technical team from being one of the early ones. I believe I was number 1 or 2 to 350 engineers over the path of the time that I mentioned to make the first sale. And this was in different
2-3 years.
cities.
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
You can average it. And then I have done the same. I joined Novo Energy January 2023, and then we scaled in 1.5 years to 120 engineers, and then so that I have been following it, and each time it's getting to a better. I normally say it's all coming by experience and learning into which end to start. If I try to boil that down as a summary, is number one, any startup scaling happens as you need to execute it. So you don't actually have the time to build your team and perform it. So this goes
Right.
hand in hand, and that makes it a bit more tricky because it's coming with finding skill set and competence is first element, not so easy, especially when you come to industries scaled in Asia. Second one, but you need to have a strategy because you will, it on that timeline, it's very difficult to check all the roles 100%. So you need to make a team strategy because if you demand a lot of experience in all the roles, normally your org comes very costly and it's very difficult to find them. So basically, you will not make it on time. So I normally say the strategy should be then, how do we make the best functional teams with certain selected seniors, with lead engineers, with associate-driven profiles you can learn? And how do we make a leadership and a dynamic so to make it becoming a sustainable machine in 1-2 years? That has been at least the latest strategy. We have deployed. I'm super proud of the team. Generally, we have built a NOVO Energy because we deployed that, and then you can scale it in speed, and then you need to basically make sure that learnings is floating over within the teams to be able to become stronger for each day. That has been at least my recipe to scale. In the battery industry, when you come to very specific experience of battery manufacturing, it is still not so common competence in Europe because we have not done that in Europe for many years. We have done it in all these companies, people you guys are aware of, but it's still not that easy to find that. If you look for 10 years experience in certain specific stuff, you need to probably find it. It's more often in Asia compared to Europe.
You need to go outside of the home market.
Exactly. And normally you end with a very international team, which I'm proud of. I have now all my battery years in Europe worked with super international and diverse team. It's a pleasure of life, cultures, views, all that. And of course, the diversity is amazing to get scale. It comes also by challenges. Cultural
Exactly.
challenges.
There was going to be a quick question as well. These kind of cultural challenges when you're building these kind of several teams. So you want this kind of cross collaboration, but then you also have the kind of international aspect here as well. How does that kind of the cultural aspect here play out?
The cultural aspect, of course, cultures are different, and that's probably the beauty of having them. But finding a common goal and a pattern and a landscape to perform the work is the key, and that is normally my and the employer's job. Let's figure out that we follow the baseline here, because if I give one example, a very senior Asian profiles and cross-functional way of working in Europe, this is very new for them because Asia historically works more reporting, like hierarchy, following the senior.
Hierarchical. Exactly.
So that means, with that said, it is a bit different. People, of course, learn because all these Asian profiles, they want to experience something in Europe to also experience something new. So they appreciate it, but getting it to work demands some focus. The second one can be language, because the level of English in Asia in general is not as high as Europe. So it means that the language barrier can be a challenge in misunderstandings, etc. So I do believe that it is coming with a lot of leverage, but it has elements you need to have in mind to be able to scale.
Yep. And you were touching, you touched briefly on years of experience with, if you're trying to recruit within Europe compared to Asia being far harder. But looking at skills and traits that you look for when hiring these kind of engineering hires, what makes someone a strong fit for NOVO Energy, for your team, would you say?
It's I have in my function or department, I have so many different engineers. So some are extremely niched. We look for an engineer to be able to optimize electrode with this amount of experience. Those are very specific niche. But if I try to touch the rest, which is a bit more general, engineer for me means problem solver. It means that you have a certain ability, certain way of thinking, certain resilience and structure to get me there. And the more problems you have earlier solved within your field, I call that engineering experience. And then you can solve those problems in software, in automation, in mechanical engineering, different perspectives or nuances of this. That's how I see the role. Somebody asked me, Pooyan, what is the perfect engineer? I told you, it's engineer for me is a problem solver. It's like, and then normally problem solving is certain way of thinking, certain personal drive, and certain methodology to document it. But you get faster and faster the more you have done it in the applicable field. That's like and it has different fields, of course. So what I normally, and then in the battery industry, chains are very common. It's often changing. Volumes are changing. Market is changing. Product is changing. To having a parameter which can be flexibility, as well as second one is managing uncertainty. You don't know everything. 80%. Let's get it there, and then we develop it. That mentality is a key in this industry to be able to get resilience and speed.
No, really nicely put. And I like how you look at engineers and these roles as kind of problem solvers. I think it's very, very kind of exactly. I think it's a really, really good way to look at it, particularly now moving forward in the age of kind of AI as well, where these kind of I think whatever stacks and everything are becoming much more kind of blurred, let's say. But really nice way to look at it. Another question, when it comes to teams and really on fostering kind of innovation and collaboration while kind of whilst also kind of trying to keep up with so many kind of advancements in the industry. How do you kind of foster this innovation and collaboration at Novo?
It's many different ways, to be honest, but I think it starts with all collaboration mentality and where engineering teams, they see their limits, because everybody believes and see a limit. I think it's all I normally felt this mentality starts with the leader, because normally people do as the leader is doing. You can wish or document something. I think questioning technical stuff, challenging people to reasonable levels to think differently, to trying to push them to learn and scale and probably result in something better, as well as trying to do that as in my role as a vice president or as any other leader. I think it's a mentality. If in your mentality in technology, the sky is the limit, and then we can try to achieve that, then you will of course get better in technology. And in collaboration, I normally say to people, this was before this talk, I was telling people, see the bigger perspective and try to find your if what we try to do in a bigger perspective is a puzzle, we all are a brick of it. Try to find yourself and try to figure out, if I do this, how is the system? Because it never gets better in collaboration than the whole puzzle brick piece.
And how each kind of piece is basically contributing.
It's like if I take, we make a battery cell. It's talking about sustainability. These cells go, it lands in a vehicle. This vehicle is moved to a customer. This customer is driving there. See it a bit. And I do understand that it's difficult to see the depths, but try to see the pattern in a bigger perspective, because then you can collaborate and probably make the best calls in a bigger perspective than your own. That's what it's a way of behaving or thinking, to be honest.
And on the point of collaboration, I'm thinking now in terms of partnerships, collaborations with any other kind of external parties. I think the energy transition requires collaboration across industries. I mean, governments, research institutions, you name it. What role did these kind of partnerships and collaborations play in helping Novo Energy achieve its goals? Obviously, Novo was, started as this kind of collaboration between Volvo and Northvolt. So I'm just interested to hear kind of how the role of partnerships is helping in Novo today.
But basically, if I commented on the industrial landscape, these investment and these factories and these industries in battery cell topic are huge. So it's basically sharing the risk, sharing the gain, and collaborating in any model of partnership financing models or any other model, I personally believe is the key, because many different stakeholders, it can be a customer, it can be a cell maker, it can be a financial party. They have different stakes in it, but probably not only one of them can take the lead because it's too weak. So I personally, and then this comes also with technical development. If you want to develop a sale, joint development, separation of core competencies in electrode or in assembly, I believe if this is too big and this is too risky, both in time and financially, I believe it needs to get shared, or it needs to, the risk and the gain, it needs to get shared. And that comes, you can look at the market, that comes by partnerships. And as you mentioned, if you take the example of NOVO Energy, it started earlier as a joint venture between Northvolt in Sweden and the Swedish car maker Volvo Cars. Due to many reasons, this is changing. But generally, if I generalize that, this is a key on a global landscape, because there are very few players who can, and if I don't know if they want to, as one player, deal with the risk. And we need to be, if you take again the sustainability endgame, we need to be faster. So I think that element is needed to work out. And we have seen now in the market that these collaborations are also coming between Asian companies and European. If you look at like Stellantis and CATL joint venture, so it's getting more and more to get speed because of different reasons.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point actually, to kind of enable that speed, but also kind of spread risk somewhat as well. Are there any exciting collaborations in the pipeline that you can share, that you can talk about?
You have, there are a lot of exciting ones. Sadly, I cannot deep dive because of confidentiality in those.
Of
but
course,
generally, if I try to send it with all the ones here, it means, battery cell industry, the market is very deep in challenges. If we all believe in the end game of this difference and this transition, I believe it's just there are a lot of stuff coming. Basically, especially, I follow the product development roadmaps across Europe and across Asia. There are a lot of product features, and this doesn't, it can be different chemistries, it can be different mechanical solutions. Customers are demanding fast charging. People go with different approaches. Some people want a fast charge, some other people want to swap the batteries. There are a lot of technical exciting stuff coming as we develop. So I don't think it has stopped, but I can, like, any specific I can't comment it in my role.
No, that's fair. That's fair enough, of course. What I'm also interested to kind of get your view on what industries outside of energy, for example, that you think are setting a great example when it comes to this kind of sustainable innovation.
I normally, when I try to compare batteries and industries, when I started in this, I compared it with automotive. Afterwards, it was probably not, it in volume and scale probably is good to compare with automotive. But I started to summarize, you have semiconductor manufacturers. They are used to new products. They have done it longer. It depends on what you try to compare. I compared other industries, semiconductor, and sometimes I compare with, energy storage. You have windmill industries, you have solar panels, you have some other similarities. They are less automotive, but I think in nature closer to battery cell, because they normally demand big investments. They need to have a huge volume to get it going. So it depends on what I try to do. I try to compare, but personally, I'm a fan of all these solar parks and what the solar industry is doing, but it doesn't mean that that's always a reasonable apple to apple comparison to making cells, because making cells is way more investment driven. But they try to enable the same end game somewhere, which is future of energy. But in element by element, you can find a comparison, but I don't have a very good one, because basically, if you could take cell manufacturing, it's a very heavy investment driven industry, and the others are not that heavy. Oil and gas it is, but oil and gas is not by nature sustainability. So I think I don't have a very perfect one, to be honest.
No, but you mentioned a few there that I think are very interesting. And before going on to more kind of leadership and the future of kind of engineering and energy itself, you mentioned before keeping an eye on like product roadmaps and stuff like this. I was just product roadmaps is kind of a subject that I hold close to my heart. What does the kind of the engineering function, if we call it that, at NOVO Energy, what does it look like? How many teams are there, or functions are there? What are you working on? What does a product roadmap look like for you?
if I take NOVO Energy, and this is probably pretty standardized nowadays since the Northwood experience, you have normally in engineering, you have two main legs. What is product development, basically bad listed, cell, electrode, mechanical, chemical testers, basically the product. And then you have what we traditionally in the market, you can call it manufacturing engineering or industrial engineering. Engineers working with factory design, layouts, machinery, connectivity, data in manufacturing. So those we can see that as two different categories. They are very different profiles, but they need to do this hand in hand, because otherwise the product one team does is not possible to make in the other team's machine, vice versa. So I think those are the different legs. In my experience in the market, of course, the technical need is developing very fast in both fields. Products are getting evolved, chemistries are getting updated to cheaper and better from performance point of view. And then, of course, machinery and factory demands on connectivity, on manufacturing execution systems to trace data, trace parameters in the machines. So those are like the legs. And then if you want to double click, we have all the roles in a traditional team. We have electrical engineers, automation engineers, we have mechanical engineers for machinery, conveyors, we have simulation. Nowadays, we run the factories in 3D before we build them to qualify them, etc. So there are different, again, engineers, problem solvers of different disciplines, and they are normally organized in what makes it functional legs, like electrode manufacturing, assembly, or charge and discharge for a cell. So normally they are organized in groups of similar disciplines next to each other, if I thought. And normally when I'm in charge of a very big function, you get different departments with different focus areas. And normally you have a leader bringing those departments to function, and I need to glue it together to make sure that everything holds together.
Yeah, and doesn't fall apart.
No, not an easy task, but very fun.
No, indeed. And as a leader in this space, then your perspective on engineering leadership. In your opinion, what are the most essential leadership qualities for someone in your sector today?
Being some are general, some are very specific in this. In this sector, you need to be flexible and fast, and that doesn't mean that you need to build an adaptable team, and that starts with yourself as a leader. You need to be able to take it, break it down fast, select what is very important, and then push it down your org to get it follow. The capability, leadership parameters. I believe my team is appreciating, transparency, understanding why. Those are the elements, because in that speed, there is no way you can get hundreds of engineers to do, you need to basically bring it down and tell, this is the vision, something has changed. The best thing is to do this. 80% of the gain is here, so let's start there. And then you need to get it down so everybody takes and break it down to what is it for me and what should I do. And then probably you run that, you can call it in a sprint, and it can happen that that product or that volume or that layout changes, and then you need to do it again. And that's what I told earlier, making a self-sustaining learning team is the key, because that's what's make you end game successful.
Yeah, really well put. And how do you kind of mentor these leaders? You talk about making sure that this kind of trickles down, the kind of the end goal is kind of very clear for everyone involved. How do you mentor and kind of help
make it happen?
These leaders, make it happen essentially.
This is maybe can be very individual, but I often hear that I am very close to the details. I try to understand and I try to be a member of the team. I am running in the layout, some detailed technical meetings to both contribute, because I feel you have a position not because of your capability, because also that you experienced it probably before. So it's a good thing to tell what worked or not. So I am pretty close to the teams. I try to help them and enable them. And I try to also tell the learnings that something didn't work somewhere else. Maybe we should do it differently. That's how I did. And then one ability I learned for many, many years ago in one of my early roles as an engineer, my leader at that point of time, he walked his talk. It's pretty simple, He basically did it. He stayed over. He next to us day to day, evening by evening.
Got his hands dirty.
Exactly. This is the best method to get everybody else to do it. Do it first, and then everybody else will do it. So that's how I did. And this is leadership or anything else. Day to day, sometimes it's very difficult, but that's at least the toolkit I have. So far, I feel it works.
Yeah. No, I think it's a really interesting point. It's not obviously in leadership roles, you can't just do that, but I think it's a good way of getting closer to the people that you're working with. Right?
Understand them and probably unbottleneck key challenges, and try to go a bit mentally front road and try to unbottleneck what's coming next, so you can pave the path for the team.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as I start to wrap up here, I think just a final question from me is really on what advice would you give to young engineers or professionals looking to build a career in sustainable energy and battery technology specifically? Is there any piece of advice that you'd give your younger self, for example?
There are two elements I want to send with everybody earlier in there. First is try to find out your interest and work with what you like. And if you don't know what you really by heart like, try different stuff until you find it, because that will basically bring you the limit will be the sky. But make sure you work with what is your interest and your skill set. You really enjoy it. I normally tell, let's make sure that your assignment or tasks pulls you. Nobody pushes you, because that will come whole the way end. Second one is, after so many years in different industries, the key I learned is that what you do in technical development is important, but even more important than that is the people and the environments you're part of, because the ones making you the one you are your surrounding. It's not the drawing. It's basically the behavior, what you can learn, how they can scale, encouraging select environments which are the way you want to be, because those environments can bring you to the next. That's my second one. And then, of course, down the road, you will learn something as well, which will change over the years. But what you will have in your backpack forever is that mentality, and that network will sit there forever. That's my advice.
Really, really good advice. And yeah, before I wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add, Pooyan?
Nothing specific. I know that the ones listening to us, I just want to send, industries, technologies, development for sustainability will never end. And as a normal, let's push it until, it will happen. It's just a matter of how much effort we need to make the magic happen. That's what I want to say.
Really, really well put. And Pooyan, thanks so much for joining us today. We've packed a lot into just over 45 minutes here. So I really, really appreciate you joining us. It's been a really interesting discussion, and nice to hear your insights on advancing battery technology, your views on leadership, sustainability, and more as well. So really, really inspiring. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, share it with fellow builders. Until next time, keep pushing those boundaries and keep building. We'll see you soon.